Hey everyone, there's a really cool movie coming out on video on demand on March 8th. It's called Prospect. Here's a clip from the trailer.
Someone is approaching.
Where are you from?
Nowhere.
How poetic.
The Queen's lair.
Where is he?
Drop it!
Oh, this is something I have never seen.
Prospect is a unique film for a variety of reasons. First of all, it was a movie that was shot by Seattle-based filmmakers in the Seattle area, and it makes great use of the environment. It's beautiful around here, and they're able to transform Washington State into a otherworldly location. So really impressed with that. But the second reason that Prospect is unique is that it relies heavily on real-life locations, practical sets, practical props, practical effects, and that's pretty rare to find in this day and age when a lot of sci-fi films rely very heavily on CG. One of the most impressive things about the movie is that it is able to create something visually distinctive and impressive on a very low indie-sized budget, and for that reason alone, I think it's worth checking out. Of course, one of the biggest challenges when you're making a sci-fi movie that's set on another planet is the spacesuits and the space helmets, and just creating that whole kind of apparatus, that whole environment under which these things are operating. It's just insanely challenging to think of and to execute. There's many challenges that go into it that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate when you're just starting on that journey. So I had a chance to chat with two of the filmmakers from Prospect, writer-director Zeek, Earl, and also production designer Matt Acosta. I invited them to my house. We had a nice chat in my kitchen about the film and about designing space helmets. How do you design a good one? What are the challenges that occur when you try to make people wear space helmets for the entire film? Hope you enjoy the conversation. Here it is. Hey everyone, David Chen here, and I'm here with the filmmakers of Prospect. We got writer-director Zeek Earl here and production designer Matt Acosta. Welcome to Dave Chen's YouTube channel. How are you guys doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
So let's talk about Prospect. This is a movie that takes place on other worlds, other planets. You created a whole universe for this. And it also features people wearing spacesuits, right? People have helmets on, and helmets is a really challenging thing to execute in a sci-fi film. Tell us about some of the challenges involved and why you chose the approach you did.
So Prospect is a very practical film. We didn't want to make this film in front of a green screen. We wanted to make it in a real location with tons of practical sets and props. And for us, it was also really important that this frontier environment not just replicate Earth. You know, it's like, I love Star Wars, but a lot of Star Wars movies, every single planet somehow has the right mix of oxygen for human beings to thrive and survive. We're like, no, this is, humans did not evolve on this planet. It's a toxic atmosphere. Our actors have to stay in their suits the whole time. Like, they're in a survival situation. They can't take their helmets off. And both Matt and I, we actually didn't have a lot of experience in the industry prior to making Prospect. We're kind of outsiders, and we had kind of, sat on our couches and were really critical of other sci-fi movies, for years. I think, one of the big ones is, and I love Ridley Scott, but, like in Prometheus, they come up with an excuse to take their helmets off after like 5 minutes. And for those 5 minutes where the helmets are on, there's lights that are like blaring in the actors' faces that in reality would actually like blind you. So we're like, no, we want to do this very like grounded and realistic. Part of this was ignorance. Like we were too stupid to like not know why you don't like realistically depict helmets. So in some ways, we made a very, I think, unusual movie because of that ignorance. So
as you pointed out, helmets in space movies, a lot of advantages to taking off the helmet. It gives the actor time and room to emote. Lighting an actor's face is a lot easier when they're not wearing a helmet. And so how did you solve some of these problems? Like what were some of the solutions you came up with to make it look good and still have them have a helmet on?
So the challenges of on Prospect with the helmets, I think the first one is just actor comfort. We were custom making these helmets, and we tried to make them as fitted and comfortable and breathable as possible. But when you have to spend 8 to 12 hours a day, wearing this thing, that is very challenging. Jay Duplass, we consulted a yoga specialist to try to get like custom yoga moves for like neck comfort, but still failed. Jay like went back to LA with a very, very sore neck. Pedro's helmet we actually designed so that it sat on his shoulders. And that was really smart, and applying that design to the other characters might have been a good idea. And then the other thing for the actors is sound. Usually, particularly in sci-fi movies, they try to do action in the helmets, but then when there's big dialogue scenes, they try to move that outside the helmets. And for us, it's like, nope, you're in a survival scenario. We're not going to come up with excuses for you to get out of your helmets. But when actors are performing, they have to get used to the sound bouncing back at them. You're kind of in an echo chamber. And so it's like there was, I think it took a couple days for each actor just to get used to how weird it sounded inside that helmet. Our sound guy consulted with the crew of The Martian to figure out the radio system, because we actually had to then build a radio system that was not just recording the audio, but was actually usable and live for the actors to talk to each other. We didn't do a whole lot of ADR. The dialogue in the movie was recorded in those helmets, and that had its own other host of, what was cool about it is it sounded real. It sounded like these people are on location in suits, but at the same time, it got pretty muddy and took quite a bit of sweetening to, be audible to the audience.
I think the other cool thing about the microphones is it just adds another layer of realism. We had to build those because they were going to be on their faces. We can't hide them anywhere. We really need to get a good signal. So we had to build something that looked kind of in-world and looked good that was on. And we actually had different designs for each character's microphone. Some people had similar ones because they were from the same world. But it was another just point of realism that we had for all of our characters. They just had this microphone, and then microphone play actually was part of the script. I think that it added to the film in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because I think, when you're designing a movie, if you essentially start it from a really grounded place where you're thinking through the logic of every facet, you just creatively arrive at new ideas that you wouldn't get to otherwise if you're just sort of kind of imagining everything in a vacuum.
Let's talk about lighting, right? In a normal sci-fi movie, lights are blasting into the actors' faces, it reduces glare, and it also allows you to see the actor. But you didn't want to do any of that, or you didn't want to do something that was like that obvious. You used completely natural lighting for most of the film, it sounds like?
Yeah, and so not having lighting gear is just one part of that challenge with these reflections, because it's like each helmet is like, picture those mirrors they have outside of parking garages. Like they reflect like 180 degrees. So normally when you're shooting a movie, you only have to worry about what's on one side of the camera, where we had to worry about what's on literally both sides of the camera. So our camera people had to wear black cloaks. They looked like ghosts. And then the other thing we had to do is that, you have anywhere from 20 to 80 people on a film crew who generally are just hanging around the set. But on our set, they had to disappear. So the minute we would yell, camera rolling, everyone had to jump behind a tree or in the whole rainforest, duck into the ferns. And then you yell cut, and they just kind of like emerge like, an army of the undead, like out of the ferns. But also what's kind of cool about that is like we have our actors who are like in a real environment, in real helmets, and we are hiding the crew for like every take. So I think we were giving them, a real scenario to work with.
Not to mention inside the helmets, they were hot and uncomfortable and like you would be in a real spacesuit. And you can hear that in their breath. I
think that's the one thing we didn't cover earlier is that in these helmets, like, it was legitimately hard to breathe. And I think that's one thing we actually didn't anticipate enough, where it was kind of fine if you were sitting not doing much. But if you're walking, running, this movie has a lot of action, you'd get winded way faster. Not to mention that all your breath, all the moisture coming out of your mouth has to go somewhere. So the helmets would fog up, within minutes. And the amount of like hours, weeks we spent trying to figure out how to counter that problem was ridiculous.
The search for finding the perfect defogging stuff, I think we tested multiple companies. I think we ended up settling on this hockey defogging wipe and spray.
We like contacted numerous companies that were like making experimental materials for the military, like essentially plastic that was incapable of fogging, and we did all these tests and they all like didn't work or didn't have like perfect optical quality. And it was this like huge endeavor in pre-production to try to find the right material. And we just ended up using hockey liquid.
Challenging to light, challenging to cool, challenging to get sound for them. After all these challenges that you solved, Was it worth it? What have you learned?
I'm extremely proud of how this movie looks because I think if we had really understood what we were getting into, we might have not done it or we might have done it differently. But because of our ignorance, I think we made a really unusual, original looking movie. And when you see some of the reflections like on the visors, because that's the main thing is like, other sci-fi movies are just trying to kill those reflections because they're so hard to work with. But instead we embrace them and we have actors in the forest and it's a whole second layer of visual information. Sometimes you see other actors like that are in the scene reflected. Sometimes you see props, so other things that are kind of relevant. You're reflecting the forest, the sky, like the amount of atmosphere and texture we were able to cultivate, I think is just really beautiful and makes that environment feel real and immersive.
There was this scene where, you start to learn how the actors are acting within the helmets, and it becomes this other extra level for the actors. And there was this very specific scene where J.D. Duplass literally holds a gun up to Pedro's helmet and puts it against the glass, and it had this completely different threat and weirdness to it because Pedro could look at the gun and there's this forced distance between the gun and the character, which in other movies you don't really have. And then seeing him play inside of that space throughout the whole movie, it was so interesting to see him playing in that space because it's just a new thing, a new piece that he gets to play with.
All right, well, I'm really grateful for you guys joining me here on the YouTube channel today. The movie is Prospect. The guys I'm speaking with are Matt Acosta, production designer, and writer-director Zeek, Earl. Movie's out on video on demand March 8th. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey, it's me again, David Chen. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with the filmmakers behind Prospect. If you want to check out the movie, and I hope you do, it's available on video on demand on March 8th, wherever your videos on demand are sold. Was really grateful for them sharing their time and expertise with us, as well as really cool footage from the movie for this YouTube channel. Speaking of this YouTube channel, I'll be making 2 videos per month in 2019, so if you enjoyed this one, you'll probably enjoy future ones. Hit like or subscribe, hit the bell icon to make sure you get notifications whenever I drop a new one. I think you'll enjoy them. And if you want to follow more of my work off this platform, you can find me on Twitter at DaveChensky or at DaveChen.net. You can also sign up at DaveChen.net/letters to get emails from me. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks for liking. See you soon.